Yes, it is the Joe Pag Show, 1-800-383-9624. Great radio stations all over. Newsmax TV, iHeartRadio, joepags.com for Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, email. I can add to that list that I gave you before the break. The Middle East is melted down and is in ruins now. Our standing in the world is horrendously low. Our military enrollment is way down. Look, I can go on and on and on and on and on. So as much as Obama wants to be out there and talk about how Hillary Clinton's going to pick up the torch where he took, where he left it, and she's going to take it to the next level, I don't want the next level of that. Just to let you know. All right, let me switch gears here. I've got a great author on the line with me. His name is Chris Bird, and Chris has written a book called "Surviving a Mass Killer Rampage When Seconds Count. Police Are Still Minutes Away." Chris, how are you?
I'm good, Joe. Pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, it's really a pleasure to have you. When you talk about gun-free zones, I immediately think about Sandy Hook, gun-free zone. I think about Virginia Tech, gun-free zone. Columbine, there was an armed officer, but the bad guys waited till he went to lunch, so it in essence was a gun-free zone. We have gun-free zones like the Orlando nightclub, and these stories continue to be perpetuated. And the one thing that the gun-grabbing left doesn't want to talk about is if you were allowed to have legally owned guns, legally carried guns in these places, at least the victims might have had a fighting chance. Talk to me.
I agree with you absolutely. We have these gun-free zones all over the place, and we've got to get rid of them because invariably mass killers choose gun-free zones because they don't want to come across anybody with a gun until inevitably the police are going to arrive at some point. I was at the Gun Rights Policy Conference recently where we were addressed by Sheriff Wayne Ivey of Brevard County in Florida, and he was saying, we're going to be responding at Mach 2 with our hair on fire, but you're the people who are there. We're not going to get there in time,
right.
And the best thing I can do is teach you how to defend yourselves.
And the bottom line is we are first reactors. First responders are answering our call. We're the ones that get to react first if, God forbid, a bad guy with a gun shows up. That's why I have my CHL. That's why people are taking advantage of the Second Amendment ability, the right to protect our families, our stuff, and ourselves. Chris, let me ask you this, and I haven't read the book yet, so you've got to let me know if it's in there. How did we get here? How did we get to the point to where we started slapping up signs that actually said no guns allowed or gun-free zone, which basically, in my opinion, is an invitation for a bad guy?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it is. It's we got here kind of slowly. Every state that passed concealed carry law in the last 20-odd years has certain places where you can't carry, at least not legally.
Yeah.
But, of course, that doesn't affect the bad guys. They carry anyway, and they know that they're not going to run into stiff resistance until the police get there, which may be anything from, 4 minutes in San Bernardino to probably half an hour in maybe Harold School District, which is up on the north edge of Texas, nudging the Oklahoma border, where the sheriff is 17 miles away.
Right.
So the superintendent there started arming his teachers, those that want to be armed. I'm not suggesting that some people don't want to be armed, and they shouldn't be coerced into doing so.
Right.
But it's the people, I guess, like you and me, who have concealed carry licenses and are interested in getting more training because it's very specific. There are things that we need to know. What do you do, for example, when law enforcement arrives?
Yeah.
One of the things, don't have a gun in your hand if you can possibly avoid it.
Right.
Also, get somebody, whether it's an adult student or another teacher or some responsible adult, to stand between where you are and where the police are expected to come from,
right.
with their hands up to explain what's happened so you don't get shot.
It's a good answer to the one lock, stock, and barrel, pun intended, question that the anti-gunners come up with. What do you do when the police show up? They don't know who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. You're going to end up getting yourself shot, and more innocent people will be injured or killed. It's Chris Bird. Name of the book is Surviving a Mass Killer Rampage When Seconds Count. Police are still minutes away. It's an example that I use all the time. And tell me if this makes sense to you. You and I both have the same car. We're parked in a parking lot at the mall right next to each other. Inside of your car, there's a flashing LED indicating there's an alarm. Inside of my car, no such LED. If you're a bad guy, which car are you going to try to steal?
The one that doesn't have an alarm.
I mean, it's that simple. I mean, we're actually telling the bad guy, if you come here, we cannot resist, we cannot stop you, and you said it only took 4 minutes for first responders to get to San Bernardino. 14 people had already been killed and many more already injured in 4 minutes. I mean, if that isn't an indication that we need to do something, I don't know what is.
Well, there's another factor in here. That's 4 minutes from the first 911 call, and very often people don't realize what they're hearing is shooting initially. At Virginia Tech, they thought there was some construction going on, and they thought it was a guy with a nail gun on the construction. But the other thing is police have to respond as quickly as possible, and the first officer on the scene should go in immediately. If you can hear shooting and you're there to protect and serve, and you've taken that oath of office, then it may be unpleasant, you may die, but it's your job to go in immediately and stop the killing. What happened in San Bernardino is the first officer on the scene, a lieutenant who was going to lunch, waited, he said, 2 minutes until 3 more officers arrived, and then they went in. By that time, the 14 people were dead, and the shooters had escaped.
It's Chris Bird. He's an author. The name of the book is Surviving a Mass Killer Rampage. When seconds count, police are still minutes away. What's amazing to me is the idea that those who have been indoctrinated to believe that all guns are bad, that they just jump up and start shooting people, they actually think making a no-gun zone or a gun-free zone makes sense. There is no way, when you use logic, common sense, and reasoning and rationale, that you can imagine saying no guns is somehow going to tell a bad guy who, I've got my AK, I've got my AR-15, I've got my 2 loaded Glocks. I was going to go into the school, but it says gun-free zone. I better not. I might be in trouble. I mean, his intention is to harm and kill and maim, which, last I checked, Chris, is against the law.
That's true. We have certainly a surfeit of laws covering all that sort of thing. And, I'm walking down the street. I've got my concealed handgun on me. I'm legally armed. Right. And I want to turn into a school. Suddenly I become a felon. Right. Because, and I'm the same person. I've gone through all the hoops to get that thing. If I had a criminal record, I wouldn't get a concealed handgun license. And certainly it means that there are less places, the more gun-free zones we get rid of, there are less places where these people can perpetrate their slaughter.
When I talk about this, and I talk about it a lot, people also will come back with this. Well, if teachers were armed, some of these high school students are pretty big, and they could probably overpower, say, a smaller lady who's a teacher, take her gun and kill everybody. I mean, it's a ridiculous argument, but what's your response to that?
Well, I would say that it's possible for larger people to overcome a smaller person, male or female. But there are, I don't know of any instances where that has happened. Right. And at least if they've got that gun, it's what was the old saw about? Sam Colt making everybody equal.
Right. No, it's a great equalizer. It certainly is. Chris Bird, his book is Surviving a Mass Killer Rampage When Seconds Count. Police are still minutes away. The whole idea that guns are the greater evil, when we don't say cars are the greater evil when it comes to an accident, it's because somebody was texting or because they were drunk or they were on drugs or something else. The knife is never the evil. The axe is never the evil. The rock that somebody used to kill somebody is never the evil. What's the basis of the far left progressives in this country, the anti-constitutionalists in this country? What's their basis for making the gun the boogeyman, where you've got more deaths, using other items and other machinery in this country? What's their purpose? Why the gun?
Because it's an easy target. It's much easier to, I guess it's a lot easier to blame something than it is to blame the people or the security arrangements, whatever it happens to be. But we've gone through this for decades now. I know people of my age and younger who were in this country growing up. They used to take guns to school because they were going hunting afterwards. They might take a handgun for show and tell, and there was no problem with this. I believe that Justice Scalia, who died unfortunately fairly recently, used to take a .22 rifle on the bus in New York City because he was going shooting at a range.
And there was never a question because we trusted the guy. The whole idea,
right.
The whole idea that the gun was. I interview Ted Nugent all the time, and he said he's got this fully automatic machine gun, an M6 or something, and he says I left it on my table in my living room for a solid week in Pags. It never jumped up and shot anybody. It was stunning. I really thought that people would die. So I mean, at some point we've got to take our heads out of our rear ends and realize that to me, the idea is to restrict the citizenry from having guns makes it easier for tyranny. Am I stretching?
No, you're not. You're not. All over the place, there's all sorts of examples where, and this is where registration comes in.
Yeah.
The left wants to register all the guns. The first step for confiscation is registration. There was a guy lent me a book about a guy who escaped several times from concentration camps. He was from Holland, and about 1938, the Dutch government passed a law which says, well, for crime control, we're going to register all privately owned guns. When the Nazis moved in, what did they do? They grabbed those lists and went door to door. And if you didn't have the gun, you probably got shot.
Wow. It's Chris Byrd. We've got to be very careful about our constitutional rights. It's funny, not funny. The left thinks that the First Amendment means anybody can do anything anytime they want, say anything anytime they want, and denigrate anybody they want who's an opponent of theirs politically. But the Second Amendment, not really an important amendment. That one should be done away with as we expand these other amendments that actually allows them to have more control over a divided country. Chris, I got to run here. Great interview. I really appreciate you stopping by. Surviving a mass killer rampage. When seconds count, police are still minutes away. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate your time.
All right, Chris Byrd, there you go. We'll put a link up on my Facebook, on my Twitter, on my, I put it on, Carrie, I won't put it on Instagram.
No, don't do that because
it just wouldn't make any sense.
Work it. Yeah.
Just wouldn't make any sense. 1-800-383-9624, your thoughts on that and much more when we come back on the Joe Pags Show.